RCMP's Commanding Officer, Assistant Commissioner Lee Bergerman, and Chief Superintendent Chris Leather, who is Nova Scotia RCMP's Criminal Operations Officer, will provide an update on the incidents of April 18th and 19th. Today,
the Assistant Commissioner, Lee Bergerman, Commanding Officer in Nova Scotia, and Chris Leather, Criminal Operations Officer for the RCMP in Nova Scotia, will provide an update on the incidents that occurred several days ago.
Then I will read both statements in French. They will
make their statements in English, and I will then read them in French.
Following the statements. We
will answer your questions following their statement.
Thank you. Good afternoon. What happened this past weekend in our beautiful province can only be described as devastating. The sorrow in communities from coast to coast is palpable. I feel it, we feel it. We see candles lit in the windows and on the porches. The pain and heartache of all families and friends who have lost loved ones is incomprehensible and only made more difficult with COVID-19 pandemic among us. The opportunity to come together to provide comfort is not there. I and all of us in H Division RCMP extend our sympathies to all of those affected. We see the vigils across the province in honor of your loved ones and recognize your great loss, including the loss of RCMP Constable Heidi Stevenson, who was dedicated to protecting Nova Scotians and whose family is interwoven in the local community. The impact of the weekend's incidents will remain, and how it's changed us cannot be ignored. One of these impacts is understandable unease and for some fear. The incidents were unprecedented, not only in this province, but in this country. And there is no instruction book on how we should feel. What I can assure you is that all of us in every part of our division and in the communities across the province are dedicated to your safety and security, and we are here for you. I am very proud of the dedication of all employees in this division and their commitment to all Nova Scotians. This was never more on display than in our response this past weekend. From when our telecommunicators received the 911 calls and we arrived in Portapique to the extensive search for the suspect to when we stopped the gunman. Our officers were there to protect Nova Scotians. One of our jobs is to thoroughly investigate this tragic incident, and we are doing just that. We know that many of you have unanswered questions. We do too. We also know you expect us to do a good job, and we want to do a good job for you. We will need time to do that. You can be assured our investigative teams are working around the clock. Employees at every level are contributing to the investigation. We also have tremendous resource support from other provinces and our federal counterparts to help us in this investigation. We are grateful for their support. We feel your sorrow, but we also feel your support and your resilience, and thank you. Thank you for your condolences, your well wishes, and the many messages of support that we have received. Nova Scotia Strong is indeed accurate, and we are here for you. I will now turn this over to Chief Superintendent Chris Leather for an update on the investigation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. I also want to express my condolences to all the families affected by this tragedy. This is a difficult time in our province, and we will all find our own way to get through this. I want to assure all Nova Scotians that we are dedicating all the resources necessary to conduct a thorough investigation. This investigation is complex. This will take time, as we want to be as thorough as possible. We have asked for and received support from the Canadian Armed Forces for equipment to help shelter those conducting crime scene investigations and resource support from other provinces and our federal counterparts. Nova Scotians have lots of questions about what happened, why it happened, what things were done, and what wasn't. You can be assured that we have those same questions and we'll be seeking answers through our investigation. There have also been several questions about why the emergency alert was not used. From that initial call, our response was dynamic and fluid, with members using their training to assess what was going on while encountering the unimaginable. Our critical incident command staff were processing fast-changing information related to what was unfolding in front of them and what they were being told of. We responded to a possible shooting at 10:26 p.m. on Saturday evening. It was determined to be a homicide, and we immediately started searching the area and advising residents to stay inside. We used Twitter to alert residents of a firearms complaint in the Portapique area and to stay in. As we searched the area, we discovered additional victims and several structure fires. We established a perimeter, and our search continued into the evening and early morning hours on Sunday. In response to new information indicating that the suspect was not in the secure perimeter, at 8:02 a.m. on Sunday, the RCMP began providing real-time information on its Nova Scotia RCMP Twitter account. Twitter allowed our information to be shared, followed, and broadcast by local, provincial, and national news outlets. At 10:15 a.m., Nova Scotia provincial emergency management officials contacted the RCMP to offer the use of the public emergency alerting system. We were in the process of preparing an alert when the gunman was shot and killed by the RCMP. As part of the investigation, we are now able to say that the shooter acted alone. We are continuing to investigate whether anyone may have assisted him leading up to the incident. That is still part of the active investigation. We are also looking for information from anyone who may know anything about the incidents that happened on April 18th and April 19th. We have set up a tip line. The number is 902-720-5959. If you call, you may get voicemail, so please leave a detailed message along with your name and contact information, and an investigator will get back to you. Investigators are looking for any information that can assist with the investigation. If you know something, please call. Let our investigators decide the value of the information, because that piece of information you have may be an important part of the puzzle for investigators. Thank you.
Et maintenant en français. Merci, monsieur.
And now in French,
Allocution de commandante.
the statement of the commanding officer. What happened last weekend in our beautiful and warm province was devastating. The sorrow of the community right across the province is palpable. I sense it, as do others. We see it in the candles that are lit in people's windows and on their porches. The pain and heartache of families and loved ones of the victims is incomprehensible, and it is even more difficult in the COVID-19 pandemic. Opportunities to provide comfort are not existent at this time. On behalf of the RCMP, we want to extend our sympathies to all those who have been affected. We see the vigils taking place across the province in the honor of victims and in recognition of your profound loss, including Constable Heidi Stevenson of the RCMP, who dedicated her life to the safety of Nova Scotians and whose family was completely interwoven in the community. The incidents of last weekend will have continuing impact. It really changed everything. And one of the repercussions is the sense of unease, and for some, even fear. These unprecedented events took place in this province, and unfortunately, there is no instruction book as to how we should feel in these situations. What I can say with certainty is that all the employees of our division in all the communities across this province are dedicated to your safety and security. We are there for you. I'm very proud of the dedication of all our employees and their commitment to their communities. And this has never been more on display than in our response to the events of last weekend. Our officers were there to protect Nova Scotians from the moment where we received 911 calls and until the point where we arrived in Portapique and stopped the gunman. Our investigators our work involves carrying out a thorough investigation into these tragic events. That is what we are currently doing. We know that you have many questions and that you are seeking answers to those questions. We too have questions. We also know that you expect us to do a good job, and we want to do a thorough job for you. But that will take time, and I can assure you that our investigative teams are working around the clock and that employees at every level of our organization are involved in that investigation. Other provinces and our federal counterparts are providing a great deal of support as well as resources. We share your pain, but we also feel your support and your resilience. Thank you for your condolences, for your well wishes, and for your messages of support. Nova Scotia Strong is indeed accurate. It is rare that words can comfort us, but know that we are with you. And from Superintendent Leather, I too would like to express my condolences to all the families affected by this tragedy. It's a difficult time in our province. And we will all find our own way through this. I can assure all Nova Scotians that we are allocating all the necessary resources to conduct a thorough investigation. This will take time, but we are determined to be thorough. We asked and received support from the Canadian Armed Forces in terms of equipment to help investigators, as well as from other provinces and from our federal partners. Nova Scotians have many questions as to what happened, why it happened, and what was done or not done. I can assure you that we have the same questions, and we are going to find the answers in the course of our investigation. There have also been many questions about why the provincial emergency alert system was not used. When the initial call came in, our response was dynamic and fluid. Members used their training to understand what had occurred, even as they encountered unimaginable scenes. We responded to a shooting at 10:26 p.m. on Saturday, April 18th, and it was determined to be a homicide, at which point we immediately began our search in the different locations and let residents know they should stay home. We used Twitter to notify residents of a firearms complaint in Portapique, advising them to stay inside. We also did a search in the location and discovered additional victims. We established a perimeter, and our search continued through the night and into the early morning of Sunday, April 19th. In response to new information indicating that the suspect was no longer in the area, at 8:02 a.m., the RCMP provided real-time information on the RCMP Twitter account in Nova Scotia. Twitter allowed us to share information to Nova Scotians and to ensure that national and provincial news outlets would share that information. At 10:15 a.m. on the 19th of April, the provincial emergency management system contacted us and offered use of the public emergency alert system. We were in the process of preparing an emergency notification when the gunman was shot and killed by the RCMP. As part of the investigation, we have been able to determine that the shooter acted alone. We continue to investigate as to whether he was assisted by someone else leading up to the events. This is still part of our active investigation. We are also seeking information from anyone who may know something about the events that occurred on April 18th and 19th, and we have created a tip line. The number is 902-720-5959. If you call, you may have to leave a voicemail message, and if so, please leave your name and contact information so that we can get in touch with you, and an investigator will get in touch with you. Investigators are looking for information that can assist us with the investigation. If you know something, please call. Please let our investigators determine the value of the information, because small pieces of information may be an important part of the puzzle. Thank you very much.
Okay. We'll take some questions now from the floor. I would ask that you please provide your name and agency for the benefit of all participants. We will allow one question and one follow-up. Absolument.
J'aimerais, comme vous dites que vous avez informé la population premièrement sur Twitter d'un danger dans leur secteur, j'aimerais savoir, est-ce que c'est le protocole de la GRC d'informer la population sur les médias sociaux quand il y a un danger imminent qui guette la population?
OK. Juste un moment, Adrien. OK. On utilisait d'habitude Twitter.
Normally,
pour
we use
notifier
Twitter
le public,
to notify the
des,
public
des actions de la police.
of any police activities.
C'est la manière d'habitude.
That is the usual way we do it.
Merci beaucoup. J'avais oublié de me nommer Olivier Lefebvre de Radio-Canada.
Radio-Canada, my question, my follow-up question is this. You talked about assistance provided by other provinces and the federal government to help you carry out this complex investigation that will take quite a bit of time. So my question is, how are the other provinces and the federal government helping you at this time?
Nous avons les membres du quartier général de la GRC Nouvelle-Écosse.
We have members of headquarters here at RCMP headquarters in Nova Scotia, and we have also received help from the armed forces and the province of New Brunswick.
Good afternoon. Shayna Luck from CBC. Can you speak to how many injured persons who are not police officers may still be recovering in hospital?
I'm not aware of any injured persons recovering in hospital. I am aware of at least one injured person who sought medical attention at hospital, but has since been released.
And thank you. And the follow-up, can you speak to how and when did the RCMP first become aware that there was a man in the province with a fake but real-looking police car and a uniform?
Those details came in their totality to us early in the morning of Sunday after a key witness was located and interviewed. Prior to that time, we did not have all those details. The bulk of the details about our suspect came to us at that time.
Can you be specific about the time?
It's between 7 and 8. I don't have an exact time when that awareness came to the CIC commander. It's in the early morning hours of Sunday.
Hi there, Andrew Douglas from Frank Magazine. There isn't any public safety risk anymore. The shooter is dead, and since he's dead, we don't need to protect his right to a fair trial. What is behind your hesitance to provide details on what you know now? We understand that there are things that you don't know, but what is your hesitance to provide details on what you do know now?
So, for instance, the timeline. I would like nothing more than to provide the media and public with the timeline, but it literally is still a work in progress, and it would be unfair and inappropriate for us to give that out in its current state. We are very close, I would say within a day, of providing a timeline with some detail, because appreciate, and I know I've said this at previous meetings here, we are still piecing together the movements of this subject. We believe we have identified the locations and sites that he attended and when he did, but there certainly are gaps that still need to be investigated.
Why does it have to be wrapped up in a bow in order to give that information? Why can't you tell us what you know?
The concern is always that we give information that is not completely accurate. And in a rush to provide the public and the media with that information, we err. And sometimes those mistakes can be impactful both to the investigation, to the victims and their families. So we're being very careful in terms of providing that information at the appropriate time.
That carefulness with providing information, you received a firearms call at 10:30. By the time you issued your first tweet, you had at least one homicide. I'm not clear on how many you knew about, but you had at least one. You described that as a firearms complaint, but then, which sort of vastly undersold it, but then you sort of oversold it with stay in your homes, a very confusing message. Are you satisfied with the messaging that went out by the RCMP on Twitter?
Yeah, very satisfied with the messaging, both with our CIC, so the commander at the time, in terms of his messaging to the officers that were in the area looking for this suspect, because remember, until the following day, we had some idea where the suspect was located, some theories, but we had no idea. And so the communications that were being provided were the best and clearest information that could be provided. And again, a distinct lack of information other than what we provided to the public by going to many of the residents in the Portapique area, for instance, and doing door knocks and checking these residents for the occupants and their safety.
Thank you, Andrew.
Good afternoon, Chief Superintendent Mike Tutton, reporter with the Canadian Press National News Service. Can you tell us what kind of guns the individual who did the shooting owned and had registered with the firearms program that the RCMP runs? And further to that, what kind of guns he used that night?
Well, certainly in regards to the firearms that were used by the suspect on the night, again, I referred previously to the CERT investigation that's ongoing. That investigation will, by now, have identified the firearms that were used, we believe, by the suspect, at least at the time of him being stopped by the police. So we don't have access to that information. That access is in CERT's holdings. As it relates to the nature of his licensing, whether he had an FAC or not, where he obtained the firearms from, that is very much still part of the ongoing investigation. In fact, it's a key part of the ongoing investigation.
You do not know what he was licensed to own at this point?
We have a fairly good idea, at least in Canada, that he did not have an FAC, a Firearms Acquisition Certificate.
Thank you,
And
Mike.
were handguns
Thank you, Mike.
used in his attacks?
I'm not at liberty to discuss that. That aspect is still part of the investigation.
Very, very briefly, if possible, can you confirm how many people died of gunshots?
I can't for the simple reason that we're not in a position yet to know whether all of the victims died from gunshot wounds or from some of the structure fires, for instance, because we, as I've said previously, have found remains inside of residences, and so that's very much part of the ongoing investigation.
I have more questions. Between 11:30 and 8:30, so...
Excuse me, we're going to take some questions from the teleconference. Nous allons d'abord répondre aux questions des
First, we're going to
participants.
take questions from people on the phone. Please give us your name and agency.
Une question et un suite.
One question and one follow-up.
Please.
Thank you, merci. Please press *1 at this time if you have a question. Et appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. There will be brief pause with participants register for questions. Il y a un court délai vous permettant de vous enregistrer dans la file d'attente pour la période de questions. Thank you for your patience. Merci de patienter. The first question, la première question, is from Serge Ruskiv from Sputnik News. Please go ahead. Your line is open. À vous la parole. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Good afternoon, and thank you for taking my question. I want to, first of all, my condolences to who have been impacted by the tragedy. My understanding, the assailant located along the 102, and is one of the thoroughfares into the house. While motive, I understand it's their investigation. Have any information that indicates that this assailant and the destination was in fact the Halifax Dark?
I can't hear the question.
No problem. Sir, I believe you're asking what the destination, the intended destination was along Highway 102. Is that your question?
My question is, was the intended destination Halifax, the Halifax Dartmouth area?
I'm sorry, I can't make you out. We're just going to have to move on.
Thank you, merci. The next question is from Christopher Nardi from the National Post. La prochaine question de Christopher Nardi. Please go ahead. Your line is open. The next question is from Christopher Nardi from National Post. Please go ahead. Your line is open. À vous la parole. Move to the next question. The next question is from Michael McDonald from the Canadian Press. Please go ahead. Your line is open. À vous la parole. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Hello, Chief Inspector. I understand from your comments today that it wasn't until 8:02 a.m. on Sunday that police realized the suspect had left the perimeter. Could you tell me how large that perimeter was?
I wouldn't have the dimensions of the perimeter. I know there was an internal and or two perimeters that were established, but I don't have that information here with me.
And as a follow-up, you mentioned that the Emergency Measures Organization had reached out to the RCMP at 10:15 a.m. to ask about an emergency alert, but one was still being prepared when the suspect was shot and killed in Enfield just before noon. Can you tell me why it took so long for the RCMP to act on that request?
Yes, the original call to the RCMP was to one of our members here at headquarters, and you can appreciate then there were a series of phone calls that had to be made to find the officer in charge on the evening and to speak to the CIC, that's the incident commander, to have the conversation about the issuing of a message. So a lot of the delay was based on communications between the EMO and the various officers, and then a discussion about what the message would be, how it would be constructed and what it would say. So in that hour and a bit, in that amount of time of consultation, is when the subject was killed, as we know, at 11:26.
Thank you, merci. The next question, la prochaine question, is from Thomas Stagel from CBC National News. Please go ahead. Your line is open. À vous la parole. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Thank you. If you knew the suspect had a fake but real-looking RCMP vehicle sometime between 7 and 8 on Sunday morning, why wait more than 2 hours to warn the public about that detail?
The information about the vehicle, the clothing, took some time to learn from the one witness, and once that information was compiled, it was immediately tweeted by our communications section.
clarify that presumably the picture came from the witness of the vehicle.
I can't speak to that, but we did interview a witness, and sometime after that, the material went out. That would be the picture of the vehicle and the suspect's photo, and that was on Twitter.
Right. We spoke to a witness today, the brother of a victim, who told us he hid in the woods in Portapique on Saturday night, did not see or hear police coming for 4 hours. Can you explain to him and to others what activity the police were doing during those 4 hours for him not to hear or see them?
Well, as I stated earlier, I described that there were 2 perimeters that were established. And so while that fellow may have thought there weren't police in the vicinity, there were a large number of police officers, both in vehicles and on foot, in Portapique.
Can you explain what kind of work is being done to retrace the real RCMP uniform the suspect wore?
It's a matter that's under investigation, but it's a key component of the investigation, and we're working very hard to do exactly that, track the source of the uniform. It's a key element of the investigation.
And just a last quick clarification on that. You said earlier that you're looking for anyone who may have assisted the gunman in the lead up to these attacks. Could that include providing him with RCMP gear? Just any clarity on what that assistance may entail?
It would include those sorts of, it would include any number of elements in terms of support. You can just imagine whether it's transportation, the weapons, the uniforms, the vehicle itself, associates here and elsewhere. These are all the elements of the investigation that are currently being explored.
Okay, we'll allow one more question, please.
Merci, thank you. The next question, la prochaine question, is from Audrey Ruel-Monceau de La Presse. Please go ahead, your line is open. À vous la parole, votre ligne est ouverte.
Thanks. Hi. My question is, when Wortman hit the road with his fake RCMP car, did he pull people over and executed the driver?
That's part of the, that is definitely a part of our investigation. We're not certain at this time. That's again, a concern, something that we're looking at very closely.
Okay, a follow-up. I've heard that the supervisor gave the authorization to the officer on Sunday morning to bump the gunman car. Isn't it against the intervention rules?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Supervisor gave the authorization to the officer to bump the car of Wortman, but in the intervention rules, like it's against the rules. They are not supposed to do that. So it was like extraordinary authorization, right?
Are you talking about with the subject, the suspect in this case? Yeah.
The suspect,
yes.
And both like Stevenson and Morrison, there was an authorization given by a supervisor that they were allowed exceptionally to bump the car, like to hit the car with their car.
I understand your question now, thank you. And that would definitely fall within the realm of the CERT investigation, because now you're talking about the movements of the suspect up into his 1126, and that would definitely fall within the realm of their inquiries. Thank you.
Okay, I have a last question, please.
Thank you very much. That's all for now.
Been asked before.
What else can you say about the other investigation that was referred to CERT that they kicked back to the RCMP? What can you say about that?
That's all for now.
It's no longer under the CERT purview. What can you say about that? What's the...
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Merci tout le monde.
Those are officials in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, giving us the latest on the shooting spree that occurred over the weekend. And of course, you're hearing reporters at the end there asking a lot more questions because there are currently 16 sites that are being investigated. A lot of questions about how the suspect was able to continue on the shooting spree for about 14 hours.